So I will, after this. Good morning, everyone. I am Bradley Appling, and thank you for joining us in the Spiritist Talk series, promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation, occurring every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Today, I am delighted to host this talk by our special guest, Marcelo Medeiros, who will be discussing a most important topic for all times: patience and tolerance. Before proceeding with today's talk, I would like to take a quick moment to let you know that this Sunday, May 1st at 10 a.m., we will have the presenters from lesson 11 to 14 answering questions from their lessons live. So be certain to tune in. And just a friendly reminder to please send in your questions for this morning's presentation using the chat window. Marcelo has reserved time to address your comments and questions once he concludes his presentation today. Now, we are looking forward to an engaging time with our speaker, Marcelo Medeiros. He joined Spiritism in the 2000s and has been an engaged worker in the United States Spiritist movement since 2012, providing assistance in the area of media communications. He currently resides in Georgia and is an active member of Caritas Spiritist Group. Professionally, Marcelo works as a journalist in Atlanta. This morning, Marcelo will speak to the topic of patience and tolerance. In the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec has said, through social union, human beings complete one another and mutually secure their well-being. Well, we all know that living in society is not always an easy task. By examining Jesus' examples of patience and tolerance, we can learn how to develop these two key virtues that help us overcome the obstacles and challenges we face in our daily life. Please give a warm welcome to our dear brother, Marcelo.
Hey, Bradley, good morning. Thank you for this introduction and thank you for the invitation. Thank you, everyone from the United States Spirits Federation, for inviting me here today for this talk. And thank you, everyone all of you who are joining us for this talk. And it is actually a very important topic. For me, it is extremely important. And many times when I'm going to give a talk about Spiritism and I decide a topic and I start the research, more and more I see that it is a really learning opportunity for me because I always need to learn about those topics that I'm studying. And so here, what I want us to see is more like an opportunity for us to see in the Spiritist literature what we can bring to help us in our daily tasks when we need to deal with patience, with tolerance, especially on those very difficult occasions that we have in our daily lives. And so I brought some lessons that I studied throughout these previous months, so we can study together and we can see what we can learn and how we can put those teachings into practice in our daily life. At least, as I always say for myself, at least try to put it into practice, because many times it is difficult. I confess it is very difficult, but at least we have this knowledge and we can deal a little better with those situations through the knowledge that Spiritism brings to us. So first, let's start here, seeing why do we need patience and tolerance in our daily lives. So for this answer, we go to the Spirit's book. That's, for me, that's always the number one book when I need to do any kind of research, any kind of study about the Spiritism. I go to the Spirit's book because there's always an answer there that we can bring to the topics that we're studying. And in this case, that's the same. And so I'm bringing first this question, the question 768 from the Spirit's book, so we can see the question and the answer from the Spirits and how we can start this topic with that. So in question 768, so Kardec asks, he says, in seeking out society, do human beings only yield to a personal motivation, or is there a greater providential purpose? So he's basically asking, why do we need to live in a society? Why do we have to engage in society? Why I can't live alone by myself, like go to the top of a mountain and stay alone throughout my life? So, and the Spirits say that humans must progress. They cannot do it alone because they do not possess all faculties and need contact with other humans. They become animal-like and stunted, isolated. So that's exactly what we learn from the Spirit's book, from all the teachings from Spiritism. We are created ignorant. So we are created like without having all these faculties that we will need to have one day to become a perfect spirit. And just by myself, I cannot learn everything that I need. Let's just see, for example, here on Earth, like when we go to school as a kid, we go to the school because we need to learn. And we need to have a teacher in that case to teach us all the things that we have to learn. But some other things we learn from each other. So it's by being in an environment where we have this diversity, where I have different people that think differently than myself, when I have people who have different knowledge than the one that I have, so I can I can learn from them, and I can also teach them the things that I do know that can help them also to progress. So it's this exchange that help us to grow. And for us to have this exchange, we need to live in society. So I cannot isolate myself. In this chapter of the Spirit's book, we have further questions about that, about people who go and who isolate themselves. So it's a very good topic. It's a very good section of the Spirit's book for this topic, because we have many different answers. And especially today, we live in a world that we do face many kinds of intolerance. We do face many kinds of difficulties of like we're facing now a war in Ukraine. So we have many things happening today that we may ask, okay, why don't I go to a place and stay there without interacting with anyone, so I won't have to face people who think differently that I do. I won't have to face harassment or any other kind of things that we do face in our daily lives. And that's exactly the answer, because we need that. We need to interact to each other. And in order for us to do that, patience and tolerance is those two tools that we have. They are essential tools for us to grow. And so let's see a little bit about that. So when we think about I will split this talk into parts. First, we're going to talk about tolerance, and then we're going to talk more about patience and how the two of them, they go together. So starting with tolerance. Tolerance comes from the Latin, and it means toleratus, like the original word is toleratus, and it means to endure or to accept. And it's very important for us to bring this meaning, because if you think about that, to endure, like to support and or to accept, many times we use this word with the wrong meaning. For example, I get myself saying all the time, okay, I need to tolerate that person, I need to tolerate that situation, meaning that I only need to be there, I only need to listen to the person to talking to me, and just like I may be thinking about any other thing, but just allowing that person to talk and to put out their their emotions or the way they're thinking, even though that situation might be bothering me. I just stay there and pretending that's not happening. That's a way that, for me, I think it would be tolerance. But by seeing that, we see that it's not the case, because if we need to have acceptance too, it means that it's not only about me being there like passive without interacting with that person, but I need to accept. And not only, it doesn't mean that I need to accept what the person is saying, or I need to agree with what the person is saying, but at least to accept that that person has a different way of thinking, that that person may have a different habits in their daily lives, different than the ones that I have. And that's okay, because each one of us, we are different human beings. Each one of us, we are different. And again, it's through that difference that we learn from each other. So in this case, we are going to see that to tolerate is not only for us to allow other people or other situations to happen, but we need to be in that situation. We need to actually to learn from that situation. And here I just brought an example. We can see here, not an example, but just one thing from my personal life. We see here milk, we see here the cows, and I brought those pictures because that's a kind of intolerance that I have. I am a lactose intolerant person. So my body cannot digest the milk. I used to, but through all the age, when I got older, my digestive system it started to reject milk. So in order for me to be able to drink milk, have ice cream or butter or any kind of uh, product that comes from the milk, I need to take that little pill that we have here, it has the lactase, that is the enzyme that my body does not produce anymore. So I just brought it here for us to see that in this situation it's very simple. I am a lactose intolerant person, but I only need to have one pill before I drink milk, so my body will be okay with that. And I brought that for us to see that it would be very simple for us if we could take those pills in our daily lives. If we could have that kind of medicine, okay, I will be in a same room with someone that I cannot tolerate, so let me take that pill and I will be okay. But it's not the case. Unfortunately, that is not the case when we are talking about people, about living in society. So do we have any medicine? Do we have anything, any pill, any magical pill that we can get and help us with tolerance and help us with patience? Actually, that's not a magical pill, but we do have some medications for the soul, some tools for the soul, so we can change ourselves, we can evolve, we can learn, and we can be able to, as my body, I am able to drink milk if I get that pill, and if I study, if I do all the things that Spiritism teaches, that Jesus teaches us, maybe one day, probably, hopefully, I will be able to tolerate more, to be more patient. So that's what we are going to see now. So now I'm bringing those pills, I mean, those lessons that we have that can help us in our daily lives. So first, I'm going to talk here a little bit about intolerance, because intolerance, when we talk about intolerance, and especially talking about intolerance in this religious point of view, that's something that we see that we have many examples of religious intolerance today. And especially for that, the United Nations has created the International Day for Tolerance, which is on November 16 since 1996. And the UN says that sectarian tensions can be found at the heart of many conflicts, with the rise of violent extremism, massive human rights violations, and cultural cleansing. And we see that situations, not only today, we have seen that situations throughout the centuries. If we look back, we see like the first days of Christianity, that the Christians were persecuted, and later on we see like the Christians themselves, they split in different uh, churches, and they would fight one with each other in the past centuries. If we see today, we have all the conflict in the Middle East. And not only that, we have conflicts in many different countries. If you see here in the US, we also have some religious conflicts. If you see here this data that I brought from 2020, we see that there were 1,244 religion hate crimes in the US only in that year. That means almost 3 hate crimes every day happening here in the United States. So when we think about religious intolerance, and when we think about those conflicts, many times it comes to our mind, at least for me, it usually comes to my mind the Middle East or some other places in the world where we have those conflicts, but we have that here within us, within here, our society here in the United States. It may be happening in our own neighborhood, maybe happening in our own city, and we see many, many different examples of that. And if we see that we have, according to the United Nations, we have more than 4,200 religions in the world. So for us to actually tolerate them in the real meaning of the word tolerate, to accept them, many times maybe it's not an easy task, because many different religions, they may think very differently from what we think, from our own beliefs. So it's up to each one of us to accept the others, to accept the other religions. If we go to the root of the word religious, it's actually religare, that is to connect ourselves to God. So we know that there are many different ways for us to connect ourselves to God. There are many different paths. The one that we choose is our own personal path, but we cannot judge, and we cannot say that the path that the other person chose is wrong, and we cannot. So we cannot do that. That's how it brings this religious tolerance to our own world. And we can see here now what I brought here is from the book of the Gospel According to Spiritism, in the text, without charity that's no salvation. So I brought the whole text from that chapter, and I put that in those programs to generate this cloud of words. So we can see here that when Kardec brought that lesson to us, when he made this compilation of different teachings that he received from this high elevated spirits, we see that the spirits are saying here about charity, about, like, we see those word neighbor here, we see love, and we do not see religion. That's important. That's what I brought it here, because we here as spiritists, we know that when we say without charity that's no salvation, is because the salvation is not in any specific religion, is not in any dogmas, or is not in any specific way of connecting to God, but it's through charity. So for us, one of the main things that we can also see here is that for us to be more tolerant, we need to have more charity in our own life. We need to be charitable. And we can see that example from Kardec, because imagine Kardec at his time in the 19th century, bringing all these different concept that Spiritism brings to us. If today it is difficult many times for us to talk about Spiritism, imagine at the time of Kardec, imagine all the criticism that he faced. And we know that if we see, like if you read Kardec's biography, if we read all his comments in the Spiritist Review, so we see how all the letters that he received, with all that hatred speech. So it wasn't easy for Kardec. It was tough for him, and nobody said it was going to be easy. But we see here that Kardec never said that, okay, Spiritism or the way that I think, the way that I see the world is the only way that we can have to reach the happiness that we all deserve. No, he brought this message of without charity there is no salvation. So that's one of the examples that, in my opinion, we need to bring. I bring it to myself all the time, especially when I face someone thinking different that I do, when I face someone having some attitudes that I wouldn't have. So let's always be charitable and always, for example, putting ourselves in other person's shoes so we can also think of and see the world through the eyes of that person. And especially going back to the first question that I brought from the Spirit's book, always to see that it's through those experiences, through those opportunities that we have, that we evolve. So by seeing that there are other ways of seeing the world, we are going to actually to learn more and to evolve as well. And now I brought this example, still staying with this message and these teachings about the religious tolerance. So I brought this from the book Planetary Transition by Divaldo Franco. In this book, like we have different religion. One of the scenes, one of the moments right in the beginning of the book, we have many different religious groups in the spirit realm. They are working together after the tsunami that happened in 2004. So the beauty of that, I remember when I first read this book, I saw, okay, but we have like one person that is Catholic, one person that is Muslim, one person that is Jewish, with another one that is a Spiritist. They are all working together. They are all working without like judging, without questioning each other. And how is it possible? Because many times we do not see that happening here on Earth. So how do they do that? And so we have here Manuel Filomeno de Miranda. He says that the caravan, therefore, was made up of members of varied spiritual formation, whose common point of understanding was the love that reigns sovereign in the universe. So for them, it was all about love. So it wasn't about the way they thought about God, if they believed in this or that point of their different religions, but they just were thinking about love and about helping those souls, those spirits who had just disincarnated after the tsunami. And one of those persons that was working that was a priest. So actually, so Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, the spirits there, one of the questions they ask, and they see, okay, we have a priest here, but he's a Catholic priest. And if you see the Catholic religion, they do not believe in reincarnation, for example. So they do not believe in these communications with the spiritual world as we do here in the Spiritism. So how they can work together, how they can be there together helping each other if they do not believe in the same things, if they believe in different things. And then they ask that to the priest, and the priest's answer is this one: when we return to the country of immortality, formulas disappear, giving way to the emergence of the essence that we soon assimilate through affinity and the logic of universal good. So what we see here, all those dogmas that we have, all the things that we see here on earth, once we go back to the spiritual realm, for them it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if the different religions have different dogmas. It doesn't matter what they believe that is different from each other, but the common point for them is these, like the logic of the universal good, the love. So basically what they have in common. And that's a good lesson for us when we see not only about this religious intolerance, but any kind of intolerance that we have in our daily lives, because it's very easy for us to look for our neighbor and to see what they have that is different from us, to look for someone at the work environment and to see what do they have that I do not like because I don't think the same way as they do. But many times we do not stop and think about what we have in common. So what we have in common, and we have a lot in common with all of us, like with all our brothers and sisters, and many times that should be our focus. So to see more what we have in common and how we can connect to the persons around us. And once we are connected, then we with those things that we have the same beliefs or the same taste. Maybe it can be something very silly. For example, okay, I will like chocolate ice cream. So that's already a point in common with someone else. We love the same music. We read the same books. So we can start a conversation about that book or that movie that we watched. So many times we have some common points with the ones around us, but we are so connected. We are so only seeing and what we have that is different that we cannot focus on the other side. And here, like we see this example, all those spirits from different religious backgrounds, they were working together because their focus was on the good, was on the love that comes from God. So they just wanted to help those souls that were coming back to the spiritual world after the tsunami. So that's for me, that's one beautiful example that we have in that book, one of many beautiful examples. But that one really came to my mind when we talk about this. And now we also brought here the tolerance in the family, because many times it's easy for us to okay, I'll go to work or spend like 8 hours with a group of people. If I do not like one of them, I can try to avoid them. If I do not like a neighbor, I would just take another path in the neighborhood and try to avoid meeting that person. But what about the family? In the family, we many times we do not have that choice, and we know, like we spiritists know, that we are born in the family, we are born in the environment that is the best one for us, for this incarnation that where we are. So if we are born in the specific family, if we have those parents, those siblings, if we have those kids, those cousins and uncles and aunts, is because we need to have them in our life. And here we 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 have this on the Gospel according to Spiritism, on chapter 14. We have like Saint Augustine talking about honor your father and mother, and talking about tolerance in the family. So two things that I brought here for us to really think a little more about those topics. He says the constant contact with the beings it hated. So he's talking about when we are born in a family with people that we do not feel that connection, or at least we do not feel that good connection. So he said the constant contact with the beings it hated is a terrible ordeal under which it sometimes succumbs if its will is not strong enough. So he's saying here that many times that's true. Many times we are going to be in a family where we do not tolerate each other, when we cannot accept each other because of previous incarnations that we've been together so many times. We know that we are brought together with our past enemies, with people we've done terrible things against them, or they have done terrible things against us. In many cases, both of them happen. So many times we are brought in those family together, in that environment together. But why does God allow it to happen? It's because we need to grow, we need to fix the issues that we have. And by being patient, by being tolerant, we are able to fix that. And when it happens, also St. Augustine says the hardest trials are almost always an indication of the end of suffering and of perfecting of the spirit, when they are accepted with a view to God. So once we are able to overcome that trial, that means to make up with our enemies from previous lives, or to get along with them the way that we did not in the past. Once we do that, we are perfecting ourselves as spirits. We are learning, and we are growing and evolving. So that's always also a good way for us to think, that many times we need to see that if we are in those situations, if we face different those difficult situations, can be within the family, as they say here, it can be the work environment, can be many different uh, places, environments in our own life. If we face them, there is a reason for that. And we know that once we overcome that, once we can be able to accept that and to deal with that, we are growing, we are going forward. And that's what God and what the high elevated spirits want us to do, to grow, and to, coming back to the previous lesson about those spirits, that they see the love as the things, the one thing that connect them all. So the same here, if we see love, if we can find love within those situations, we can actually grow, and we can actually become each day better persons. Is it easy? No, it's not easy, but we have at least the tools here. We have many examples from Jesus and from many other spirits that can help us to overcome those situations. And now, as we were talking about the tolerance in the family, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the patience in the family. And I'm going just to summarize here one. One text from this book, Cartas y Crônicas, from Brother X, uh, channeled by Francisco Cândido Xavier. In this lesson, it is called Paternal Patience. Uh, Brother X is talking about the first days of Christianity, and there are two people in this story, one father and his son, that they are living here on earth on the first days of Christianity, but they choose different paths. Like the father is a very wealthy, very rich man, and he donates all he has to follow Jesus. The son doesn't do that. The son decides to like keep going to to keep having his all his physical pleasures, the pleasures from the physical world, and does not listen to Jesus' teachings, does not follow the Father. So they have different paths here on earth. And what happened when they go to the spirit realm? The Father goes to a very high elevated place, and the Son goes to the lower zone. And the Son is suffering there. The Father goes there and see the son suffering, and what he does, he wants to help the son. So he goes to Jesus and asks Jesus if he can have the permission to go to the lower zone to rescue his son. And Jesus said, okay, you can do that. So that's what the father does, because he loves his son. He wants his son to be in the same place where he is. So he goes there, he bring the son to the higher realm, and he's very happy because the son is with them. But once the son wakes up, he sees himself with many wounds. His spirit, his spiritual body is has many wounds because of the devices that he still has, all the lifestyle that he chose while he on earth. And he look around, he see many spirits, like pure spirits going around, and he doesn't feel good. And he starts to scream at the father. He starts to ask, why did you bring me here? I don't want to be here. I never asked to be here. And so he is brought back to the lower zone. And do the father what does the father do? The father then decides that, okay, his son was not ready to go, because each one of us, we have our own time to receive this rescue, and his son wasn't still ready. So during 92 years, every single day, his father was going to the lower zone to pray for his kid. And this kid, he wasn't able to see his father because of the, not only the place where he are, because of his own state, he wasn't able to see the elevated spirit, and an elevated spirit as his father was. So during 92 years, every single day, the father was going to the lower zone. The father was praying to his kid and waiting until the day that his kid was ready to be brought to the higher realm with him. So here we see a very good example of this paternal patience, because the father had his patient to go there every single day. He tolerated first all the insults that his kid told him once his kid woke up, and he accepted that. He knew that his kid was still suffering. He was still going through this process of recovery. And after he was ready, he went and actually rescued the kid. And they were actually, after that, those 92 years living together. And so I brought here some words from Emmanuel about patience. Is from the book called Siga Me, or Follow Me. In English, it has not been translated to English. So Emmanuel, he brings us a few points here. He says that, after all, having patience will not mean smiling at human evils, not nor condoning their undignified activities on the face of the world. And if we see that the father was not smiling at the situation of his kid, or the father was not accepting the evils itself, but he was accepting that his kid wasn't still ready, that his kid had many things to learn. So it's not that he was agreeing with the way of living of his kid, but he was accepting that his kid was still in the stage that he still needed to learn in order to grow. And Emmanuel also brings here, he says, Jesus was the model of supreme patience and resisted our inferiority by loving us. He did not level with our weaknesses, but took advantage of every opportunity to improve us and lead to good. So if we see Jesus, a perfect spirit, came here to earth while we were in a very bad situation. Imagine if we are not in a good situation now. Imagine 2,000 years ago how we used to be. And Jesus was accepting that in a way that he was seeing that. He knew that we were still immature, we were still growing, but it doesn't mean that he was like agreeing with our lifestyles. That's why he came here to teach us, to show us the way to go to God. So he came here and he taught us, and he's still teaching us. And one of the best books that I have, that we have in Spiritism, in my opinion, is the book Jesus in the Home, because in that book we see, like, we have 50 different stories of Jesus doing the gospel at Simon Peter's house, and every time the story starts with like the disciples arguing about any different situation, and Jesus allows everyone to give their own opinion, and after carefully listening to everyone, he comes and gives a lesson, tells a story, and gives a lesson to all of them. So Jesus was doing that. He was watching each one of them. He was seeing each one of the disciples' difficulties and own points of view. And after seeing all of that, he would come and give them the lesson. So that's exactly what Emmanuel is saying here. He took advantage of every opportunity to improve us and lead to good. So as the Spirit also says, as saying in the Spirit's book, that Jesus is our model and guide. So let's always read and watch those stories so we can better learn with Jesus' example. And we also have here brought another chapter here from the chapter 9 from the Gospel according to Spiritism, when they say here, a friendly spirit says, be patient because this is also a charity. Everyone should practice the law of charity as taught by Christ, who is God envoy. So we have here the same way that we saw that being tolerant is also practicing charity. So being patient is also practicing charity. So being patient towards each other. And not only that, now we're going to see another level of patience. Just a short story I will summarize here. Another story from the from Brother X, channeled by Francisco Xavier. This is from the a story called Tests from Patience. So we have in this story two women, they are talking before reincarnating, and one of them, she wants to come here to Earth to learn how to be uh, patient, how to acquire more patience. And so she comes here, she's living a good life, she's doing well with all the the things there that she was supposed to deal, until like a few years after her marriage, she starts to have some issues within her own family. So with her husband, with her kids, and instead of seeing the situation and trying to overcome the situation, she just started to complain about them and to complain about her life. So all the time throughout the other years, she was just complaining, 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 and not trying to change the situation, of not trying to learn with the situation. And what happens when he went back to the spirit realm, she met again with this friend. They were talking again. And then this friend tells her, okay, we went to Earth. We had this goal about learning how to be patient, but you failed because the time you needed the most, the time the life gave you the opportunities to improve, that you started to complain. We started only to complain not about the others, but about yourself, about the life where you were in, and you fail. So you will need to go back again to Earth, have another opportunity to learn that. And then she says, for us who many times have been wronged with the neighbor, the best method to acquire patience is to be just toward others without demanding the same from them. So that's why she was trying to learn about that. So she needed to be patient toward others, but instead of that, she was just complaining and she failed in that. And I brought this lesson as well for us to see that many times it's not only about being patient toward others, because in this case, we see she spent a whole lifetime here, she failed, and she was going to come back here again. So she needed to be patient towards herself because she would have to face that same situations again. And that happens to us all the time, because many times it's very, especially I always joke that it's very easy for us when we start learning Spiritism, we start seeing all these teachings that we have, and we want to improve very fast. And so we become anxious about improving, about doing the right things, and about seeing all the vices that we have and trying to be a better persons. But many times it can lead us to be also impatient towards ourselves, because if I see like many stories of high elevated spirits and people who have already acquired many uh, many different gifts that I do not have, and I want to be there. I want to be there in those places, but I need to be patient. I need to see that I'm not there. I'm not there yet, so I need to go little by little. So that's also a test for us. That's also a learning process for us, not only about being patient and tolerant towards others, towards our brothers and sisters, but towards ourselves, and knowing that we are eternal spirits, that we have a long path ahead of us, and we need to slowly walk through that path as well. And this is just another uh, example, just very short. I will just very short tell this story. It's from the book O Tesouro Difícil, or The Difficult Treasure, from Mei Mei, another book channeled by Francisco Xavier. So in this story, Mei Mei is asking the story about a man who wanted to improve, who wanted to grow, and he asks God many different gifts, because he said, okay, he makes a list of many different gifts that he needs to have, many different vices that he needs to overcome. So he asked many different things. So the first one, he asked for beneficence, and what God does, God gives him, allows him to be born in a very rich family. So he had money, and he split this money with the poor people around him. So he was very successful in that. So he asked God, he wants to learn discernment. So again, he was born in a very rich and wealthy family, so he could go to good schools, he could learn, and that way he also reached what he was asking for. The next life, he said he wanted to have artistic gifts. So he came back to earth again. He had the opportunity to learn and to develop his artistic side, and he became a very good artist. So he achieved that again. The next one, he asked for simplicity. So he came again, but this time in a very poor, simple home, and he saw that he could be happy with very little resources. And in one lifetime, he was able to achieve that. And then he asked for authority. He asked for the gift of explaining the laws of life. And each one of those points, he could achieve those in one lifetime. And then the last one, he asked God that he wants to acquire patience. So he needs to learn how to be patient. And it's been, according to Mei Mei, it's been 800 years. The man is still coming here, reincarnation after reincarnation, and he has not learned that yet. So just a short story for us to see that it is still very difficult for us to acquire patience. So it's not an easy task, and it's a learning process, and we need to be patient with that as well. We need to be patient. We need to learn and to know that it's very slow process. And let me just move here. So I'm just bringing out this one from the book O Essencial, or The Essential, from Emmanuel, because here he tells about God's patience, and he's making this comparison about patience and nature. And patience and tolerance, because he says here the seed in the soil waits tolerance. The tree asks for love so it can produce. So let the patience be within us, the calm in the form of work. And the greatness of the world is the great of the work is the greatness of God. So if we compare ourselves to nature, and if just by watching nature around us, watching this planet where we live, how many centuries, how many years the planet was evolving and is still evolving to be the way it is today. Like we know that it's not that the planet Earth was created just the way it is, prepared for us to live, for the human beings to live here. No, it's been a process. And if we see God and Jesus, who has been with God since day one of planet Earth, they have this patience to to wait until the planet was ready for the first creatures here, and until it was ready for us human beings to come here. So it's not a process that happens from day to night. And the same things, if we see like those seeds in the soil that waste tolerance, how many seeds that we have within us? We have the seeds for patience, the seed for tolerance, the seed for charity, the seed for all those uh, good things that God brings to us. God wants us to have. We have that within us, but we actually need to be patient for them to develop. So it's not something that's going to happen from day to night. It's something that will be taking little steps. So I think it's very important when we are talking about tolerance and patience for us to have tolerance and patience toward ourselves as well, knowing that we are still imperfect spirits, that we are evolving. And during this path that we have many help from our friends from here on earth, from the spiritual realm, but it's always a process. And by seeing what we need to improve is already the first step, but we don't need to rush and to be impatient toward ourselves, because we are not improving all the things that we must improve from day to night, because it's not an easy process, it's not an easy task. And here I just brought this last slide here for us, because many times very simple things that we do in life can help us a lot to improve our patience. And this is just one example that I brought, because last year we got here at home uh, a record player like this one for us. If we think about today, we are living in this very modern world that we do not need to have those old fashioned record plays anymore, because we can have just an app and just ask the app to play a music and to skip the music and to go to another music. But we brought one very old style here. And for me, that's being a lesson of patience to listen to those records again, because I just put them, play them, and I cannot say for it to skip the music. So I need to be patient until the music that I want to listen comes. And also I need to tolerate the other music. I need to accept the other musics that are there from the beginning to the end. So for me, it was just a very simple difference that we made here in our daily life, but it's teaching me how to become more tolerant, how to become more patient. So many times we need to find those little lessons, those little tools that we have in our life just to help us. Many like simple things as this one can be very helpful to all of us. So I just wanted to finish with this very simple example. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, Marcelo. Uh, Many good thoughts and ways to inspire our better selves. We know that it can be challenging, but we also know that patience and tolerance can provide us with a more harmonic day to day existence. So, thank you very much for these examples you provide us. So now, at this moment, we are open for comments and questions from the audience. And I'll start off with one from Marcia. She says, "Thank you for bringing up the idea of tolerance as the need to endure and accept what does not comply with our own way of thinking and living. But can you talk a bit about diversity and inclusion movement, and how should we really embrace it with patience and tolerance?"
Wow, that's a hi, Marcia. Yeah, that's a very good one. And then, but that's the beauty that we have today. That's true. We have more and more these diversity and inclusion movements, and from many different aspects of our lives. And that's really a lesson of patience and tolerance, because by having diversity, if we have diversity in our work environment, if we have diversity in our neighborhood, in the place that we live, we are going to face people that are different from us. And we are going to learn through their experiences. Uh, just one example, like before I moved here to the US, I used to live in Brazil, and I didn't have contact with people from different backgrounds. I mean, from foreign backgrounds. Like I used to live only with Brazilians in Brazil, like my own community. At school, it was very rare at a time to have someone that came from abroad to live in the community I was living. And once I moved here to the US, I became the immigrant who was going to another country. So I was already the one who was going to another country, and I had to be like to learn how to tolerate the in that way, to accept the habits and the way of living of the country where I was living at the time. And not only that, but all the different people that I met here from many different backgrounds, from many different countries. So it helped me a lot to learn and to learn that, to learn how to accept different backgrounds, people who had different lifestyles, people who have different upbringing. So it was good for me to, because I was very in a very how can I say, I was in a very stationary place. Like was very easy for me to be in the place that there was. But once I moved here, I had to face this diversity, this inclusion, because I wanted to be included myself. So I turned from one side to the other side. And that's very, very interesting. When we saw I talked about being on other people's shoes, trying to see life through the other's eyes. Many times we actually life put us in that position that we become the other side as well. And when we talk about diversity and minority, for example, by moving here to the US, I became to the other side of this coin. And I think that's very important for all of us. And these movements of diversity, inclusion, that's something that will make that makes us all see life with more tolerance and more patience. So I think that's good for any side of this movement.
Mm, wonderful. We have a comment and question from Yasko. Although cognitively we know we should accept divergent opinions and behaviors, emotionally we react to them. So organically taking all as an aggression directed to us. What kind of mental exercise should we practice in our daily lives to avoid taking them so personally?
That's tough. I do the same. I take them personally all the time. But wow, mental exercise for me, prayer is the best one. Especially that there's a very good prayer, the one that I love this prayer, and I say this prayer all the time. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, there's a prayer for our enemies, and many times when I say that I pray, many times when I say that I love that prayer, people say, okay, but for the enemies, why do you have so many enemies? We do not have enemies. I don't have enemies. We do not need to see other people as enemies. But if we see that like enemies in a way that can be anyone that thinks differently from us and that make us feel uncomfortable, or that make us like take that opinion personally, or anyone that hurt hurts us in any way can be considered in this way of seeing an enemy. So I go to the gospel according to Spiritism. I open that prayer, and I many times I say that one day, the other day, again and again, until I feel myself more comfortable being in front of that person, or being interacting with that person. So I think that prayer is a very good one. Any prayer is good, but particularly for me, that one is very good, because I remember that prayer. We have a few points. For example, we ask God for to forgive that person. We ask God to forgive us if we have in the past done anything wrong against that person, because many times we do not see that. And it's also ask God an opportunity for us to do good unto that person, and also to accept any good that may happen to that person, even though that can hurt me, and allow me not to feel hurt by that. Like, I mean, that there are many good points in that prayer, so that's a very good one, at least for me.
That will be very helpful. Um, Paula asks, she says, I live in a retired community with little for those around her to do. They basically talk about their operations and their sickness and again. How do I set myself up to endure these every day, to hear these over and over, in listening to them?
I think that one, like when we see the charity part, that would be a good one, because that we all of us we face similar situations in our lives, and if we see that through the eyes of charity, that many times those people, they need someone to listen to them, they need someone they can talk that story, even it is over and over again. Many times they do not remember, they have already told that story. And so we can see that as like a charitable opportunity for us, because we are doing something good to them. Maybe they need someone. Maybe many times they do not have anyone they can talk to, or they do not have many opportunities to talk, or no one they can open up about that, or they just need to talk about their life, even if it is the same, like about their operations or their sickness, or they're not feeling well. But I think in that case, maybe the best thing for us to do is to see that as a charitable opportunity, and acting, being charitable towards our neighbor.
Hmm. It is a tough situation, but yes, charity towards our neighbor is important. Um, one other uh, comment and question from Marcia. The idea of patiently waiting for one is ready to grow is of immense significance to all of us who are parents and witness our children's suffering. How can we best prepare to be patient with these types of situations?
Well, I'm not a parent, so I cannot speak about as a parent, but as like but I have many nephews and nieces, and like we face that situation all around us as well. but I understand, especially when it is something and we see the children suffering, it's very tough. But one thing that, for example, one thing that I'll always bring to my nephews, for example, is examples that I faced similar to the ones they're facing when I was young, and how those examples, those situations helped me to grow and to become the person that I am today. For example, I remember I suffered from bullying when I was like 13 years old, and those were like during almost 1 year of my life at school, and that was a very tough moment for me. It was very difficult at the time. I suffered a lot, but with that, like all the things that happened after, for example, that helped me to move to another place, to another school, and by moving to another school, I met so different people, so many good people, good friends, and it was a good opportunity for me to grow, to go to a new place, to develop, for example, learn how to like, because I'm a very shy person. At that time, it was even worse. So I had to meet new people. I had to interact with them and to get new friends. And for a 13-year-old shy boy, it was very difficult, but it was very good for me to grow as a person. And now when I look back and I see how important it was for me, so even today, I really, in my prayers, in my thoughts, I really thank those people who were the bullies, because if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have changed it. I wouldn't have grown the way that I grew. So I think they were very important uh, to my life. That situation was important, even though it was a tough one. It was important. So many times, just by looking back and seeing all the things that we faced when we were kids, we can see how important it is. But it doesn't mean that we are allowing maybe the kids to suffer. We are maybe there, no, I'm here if you need anything, as the same way that I had during those years. I had my parents, I have my siblings, I have so many people around me helping me to overcome that situation. But the suffering itself, now I see that it was something that really helped me to evolve.
Mm. That's a very important point you brought up, that maybe these trials, these tests in our lives are opportunities for us to uh, look at being more patient, being more tolerant, and improving ourselves. Are there any other thoughts or questions from our audience? Okay. Um, so thank you very much again, Marcelo, and much appreciation to everyone who watched today's Spiritist Talk Live, and those who have been following our weekly Spiritist Talk series. And before we close our live today, uh, I would like to remind everyone that the United States Spiritist Federation virtual course, Initiation into Spiritism, which is provided free of charge on Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It is a self-paced course for those who would like to learn or review the basic principles of Spiritism, published by Allan Kardec in 1857. Please avail yourself of this great learning opportunity by visiting the course page on the USSF website to receive the reminders by email. So I am quite excited to announce that next Saturday, May 7th, I'm sorry, will be quite a special day. And I hope you can join us again, as it will be, drum roll, the 100th live. Imagine that. Truly a marvelous achievement, and one that all of us can applaud. So the best way I can think of to celebrate this great milestone is by tuning in at 11 a.m. next Saturday, when Jusada Korngold will be speaking to us about Spiritist Journey 1862, and I'm certainly looking forward to it. Marcelo, before we close the live, would you please offer a prayer?
Sure. So let's close our eyes, elevate our thoughts, and connect ourselves to the elevated spirits that are here around us, to our brother Jesus, and to our dear God. And we thank you, God, for all the opportunities that you give us to learn, to evolve, and to become each day closer to you. Thank you for having those talks here with the United States Spirits Federation, an opportunity for us to improve ourselves and to be connected to the higher spirits, to all the mentors that we have around us. Please, God, allow us to keep this good vibrations, to keep this light within us today and always, helping us to grow each day more and more, overcoming our vices and learning through the example of our brother Jesus. Thank you so much, and so be it.